Part 2 of If the Primarchs Listen to Strinstorm. Dark Imperium Summary. Let's give them a general idea of what the future is like first, shall we? There was much debate amongst the sons of the Emperor. The tapes their father had entrusted to them to inform themselves on the future threats the Master of Mankind dreaded were labeled rather obtusely. Gilliman in particular was driven to distraction by the labeling. Each title was undoubtedly related to their contents in some way, but it was proving difficult to parse any meaning. Lehman Russ was a simple man in many ways, not unintelligent but direct. He saw things differently from many of his brothers, so it came as no surprise when he simply grabbed the tape labeled Dark Imperium from Gilliman's hands and simply played it. Lorker sighed, saddened by his brutish brother ending the lively debate, but even the orator of the Primarchs agreed that it had been running long. As the screen lit up, it revealed the symbol of the 13th Legion of Space Marines. Behind the insignia, a still image of the Primarch Papa Smurf holding his sword aloft. Innuendo much? There was a collective groan from Angron and the twins, and a much more dignified mutter of distaste from Lorgar. Not room to talk there, Lorgar. The Primarch of the Ultramarines had made more than his share of enemies amongst his brothers with his ego and the tendency of his legion to steal the show. And of course, what tale of tragedy in WoW could begin with you, favored son? Angron sniped from his throne. He, in particular, had been rubbed the wrong way by the actions of Gilman's Marines. The man himself bore the complaints placidly. A childish part of his mind wished to throw his own barbs back at Angron, but a leader must always maintain decorum. That was something that the Primarch of the World Eaters had never understood. The concept of avoiding a battle was alien to the savage, so it was with a quiet certainty of his own superiority that he chose to pick his battles, instead sharing his own thoughts on the video. Brothers, this is pointless. If we are to make any progress towards fulfilling the Emperor's edicts, we must listen to these tapes. Even Angron could see the logic in that. He eased back into his throne. The sooner these infernal tapes were listened to, the sooner he could return to war. Magnus, however, had one question. Why is there music in the background? If these are at truly serious matters, it would be better to convey them to us in an easily comprehensible format, would it not? The Lord of the Death Guard spoke from his throne, his voice perhaps more biting than necessary as he spoke to the Crimson King. It is a matter of the Imperium, brother. Assuming any semblance of rationality is the first step towards madness. Magnus bristled but held his tongue, a decision probably held by his brother first. Magnus, pressing the start button on the tape, clearly bored of the conversation. Many of the iron-handed Primarch's brothers felt pangs of gratitude toward him. A fight between Magnus and Mortanian was inadvisable, particularly in their father's palace. Indivisible tension lay thick throughout the air, blanketed by its weight. It feels impossible to bear on the steps of the pathway father unknowingly paved. I'd one day hoped to follow, but now I rue the day. Even leaving behind the singing, which most of the Primarchs, with the singular exception of Magnus, has dismissed as warp trickery, that last line invited alarm from the assembled Primarchs. As Lionel Johnson, the Primarch of the Dark Angels, turned a penetrating glare upon his brother, with a measured but accusing tone that demanded an explanation. These words ring of treason, brother. Would you turn back on the Emperor? Robot bristled at the blunt accusation. The Lions lacked tact grating on him, perhaps more than the accusation of treason. Of course not. If we are to learn what my revenant self is referring to, we must listen. We lack context, brother. With a grunt, Leon eased back into his throne, content to simply observe his brother for now. If Robot was a traitor, there was no way he could leave this palace alive, and Gilliman knew it. As I approached his torn form decaying like a corpse, the song had only just resumed when that line sent the Primarchs into a great confusion. Once again, all of the transhuman demigods yelling over each other, accusing the theories were positioned at top volume across the room. Fortunately, the commanding voice of the Horse Lupercal, the War Master, cut through the din. and the wrath of his brothers could not but placate against the cold command of the eldest son. This accomplishes nothing. The information we seek lies within this music. Peace, brothers, we will find our answers soon enough. Funeral atmosphere comparisons clouding every thought. There are no bereaved or mourners, as should be the due course in the wake of all the sacrifice winds from the catafalque. Magnus and perhaps the rest of his brothers questioned what sacrifice the corpse of their father could perform, but they wouldn't heed the edict of Horus and continue to listen to the song rather than posit theories without information. You've sat here silent and guiding. Your ways are inconceivable. Lorgar was the first to break his silence. Brothers, does this mean that father is still somehow alive? He is a perpetual, is he not? Magnus replied hesitantly, unwilling to voice what's forming in his head. Perhaps. Father is a powerful psychic. While we don't know the scale of his injuries, it's possible that he was able to maintain his life using those powers. From what we have heard, it seems that he has been incapacitated beyond the point of repair, but he may just survive. It was with a sense of subtle and almost universal relief that the video resumed, while we, your children, chased a goal that was unachievable. What will happen in the future? Magnus was becoming concerned. Gilliman had never been his favorite brother, but he had never had cause to doubt the other man's loyalty to the Emperor. What would happen in the future that could completely destroy his brother's faith in the Great Crusade? In our naivety, mistook brilliance for warmth, confused by your blinding light, thought of ourselves as your sons. Shock, confusion, horror, these things in abundance could be found in the ruin room. Future Gilliman had just given a voice to a persistent fear within all of the primarchs, a fear that the Emperor only saw them as tools. For some, this fear was motivated by love. They truly loved their father and wanted to believe that he loved them as well. But for the others, those who followed only out of fear of the master of mankind's wrath, it was the fear of one who knew they had a limited shelf life. Angron may have been a berserker, still, he was no fool. What purpose would he have when the war was over? Now everything I've sacrificed for you've called into doubt. How could I trust your guidance amidst the secrets you keep out? What secrets? Conrad may have asked the question, but none of his brothers had an answer. The sons of the Emperor were being forced to confront how little they truly knew of their father. And I know now you'll let me live any lie I need to as long as I cover the needs you've deemed that I see to. This video was a source of one crucial thing for Angron, vindication. The Emperor never cared for them. He merely humored his sons with false displays of affection. His brothers, not the primarchs, but the loyal warriors who fought at his side against the High Riders, were the only proof he would ever need. Perhaps Gilliman, seeing the truth, would allow them others to come to the same conclusion. Maybe then they could be brothers in more than name. A subtle misdirection come to ripple and spread, given enough isolation, will become truth in its stead. This frustrated Lorgar. It was a common critic his brothers leveraged against his religion, but it was far from fair. Even if the Emperor claimed he was not a god, what else could he be? The lie that was the imperial truth had echoed throughout the legions themselves. Only his word-bearers had passed its test and determined the truth. Lorgar hated lies, and the idea of one becoming the truth brought the Primarch to the point of wrath. Well, there you go. A mention of the quote, so this must be accurate. 10,000 years for every fault to manifest as foundation with no concern for real problems. Only inner fixations. Look what they've made of our dream. Rotting, bloated carcass visage. 10,000 years without the Emperor. Corvus' shock was palpable. How did they survive this long? The picture of peace I painted, not at all like this image of sentiment we defended. Did the reason and hope desired they misconstrued it as heresy, burnt it all in the same pyre. That word, heresy, enraged the primarchs. Even Lorgar, despite his religious affiliation, believed in the message of the Great Crusade. The idea of science being blasphemy, it had no place in his worldview. Gilliman was shocked. How could his counterpart have allowed the Imperium to degrade to this disgrace? Even without father, he surely would have been capable. Even his brothers would have been able to keep it from falling. The others were too focused on their fathers. Some force had been able to banish every one of the primarchs, or worse. Maybe the torches of ignorance should have taken as well. Let all the cruelty of Hortus guide them all directly to hell. Ah, of course, Gilliman thought glumly. A traitor. Leon was the first to push through his shock at the thought of the War Master's betrayal and leapt to his feet, the sword in hand, prepared to execute Horus then and there. Lehman Russ was not far behind him, but as the two began to level their strikes, they were stopped in their tracks by an unlucky source. Brothers, stop! Shout from Sanguinius paused the two avenging primarchs in their tracks, both barely holding back their righteous fury. Both of them trusted the angelic prime of the Blood Angels, but their patience was thin, and Horus, too shocked to defend himself, was clinging to life by a thread. This is the future. We can stop this. Put your weapons away. Horus is still a loyal son of the Emperor of mankind. This is treason. Sanguinius pleaded with his brothers, trying in vain to soothe their wrath. It was the Wolf King bonded, his voice tight with fury. We don't have that for sure. He could be corrupted. It was Gilliman himself who roared next. Enough! We are brothers. Do not stain your hands with kinslaying. Brothers, we shall await Father's judgment. It was only slowly that the two primarchs returned to their seats, their eyes cold and furious, their gazes never once leaving Horus Lupercal, even as the video resumed. Better to mercy kill our sin, our penultimate mistake, than live to see the horror that they've tried to keep in my wake. Conrad Curtis felt a kinship with Gilliman at that moment. If the Imperium was truly corrupted to the core, it would be for the best to rip it up from the roots and start anew. The corruption of men's hearts could only be purged through fire. It was a cruel burden, but one that the primarchs had been forged to bear on behalf of their father. The more merciful sons of the Emperor chose to restrain themselves. While Vulcan could never agree with the idea of mercy-killing, he could understand the disappointment his fellow Primarch felt with the people of the Imperium. They were all one species, even the Primarchs, and it hurt Vulcan to see them hurt each other for their petty differences. That was the goal of the Imperium, to bring the disparate fragments of humanity together. Sadly, his brothers at times forgot that. Show me an insight, justify our fate. Tell me that our lives have not been lived in vain. I command attention. I demand that you explain. I'm begging you. Make sense of what has been ordained. And nice rap, man. Vulcan could hold his tongue no longer. Robot, what we have done has meaning, even if we are cursed to see our dream crumble over the millennia. Our lives were not a mistake. Gilliman was taken aback and frankly touched by Vulcan's attempt to comfort him. Thank you, Vulcan, but the version of me who questions our path will never exist. We shall prevent the tragedy that would tear the Imperium asunder. He looked at even the brothers he could not get along with for a moment. All of us. That is what Father has demanded of all us after all. The overwhelming weight of the Imperium upon me. I'll scatter all the chaos while we recover this lost dream. We've lost our sight for too long and have strayed from the target. I'll realign our vision and make sure they don't forget. Good. Gilliman smiled to himself. Courage and honor, even in the darkest times. Vulcan and Sanguinius smiled as well, pleased that brother will had not been broken by the grim parody of Imperium had become. Never again will creeping shadows darken our doors. Never again will chaos loom while we conquer the stars. And Grun scoffed. It appeared Gilliman hadn't come to any conclusion after all. He was still his daddy's lapdog, even when his father was dead. Disgusting. I will not settle for waiting. To die in this stagnation, we must be proud and unified for our salvation. I fell with a wish of salvation on my lips, yet find myself alive in a new apocalypse. Though this dark Imperium shook me to the core, I'll command without doubt to the path we walk today, towards courage and honor. It said something that none of the Primarchs were able to scoff. There you go, episode/part 2 of If the Primarchs Listen to Strinstorm.